Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. and the United States on a week-to-week basis, looking around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, technologies, services, and products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And as we go to a planet of 9 billion people, how are we going to be able to take care of all of them? And we're looking at a unique way of viewing the Earth from the standpoint of photography and photographs. And we're going to be talking about what's called the World Press exhibition, and this comes out of the World Press contest for the top photographers all across the globe. And a good friend of mine sitting right beside me, and actually I'm his sponsor for the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C., is Robert W. Mines, who is the Executive Director of what's called Lightscape Foundation. Also, he's a member of the International Affairs Committee for the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C. And Robert, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
It's a pleasure to be back, Sam.
And I want to just give you a lot of love and kudos for the fact of actually bringing this to Washington, D.C. Started in 1955, and my understanding is it's never been here before. And so you show up, and all of a sudden we have the World Photo exhibition here. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Anyway, tell us a little bit about the vision and mission as far as Lightscape Foundation. We'll start with that first, and then we'll move into the exhibition.
Sure. The Lightscape Foundation sort of came out of the same idea that you and I have at the Rotary Club, that it's very important to be able to have discussion between different people of all walks of life and to have a good, well-informed debate. And so our idea is that the best way to have that is to sort of get people to look at an image, because you and I will look at a photograph the very same way. And you might bring different baggage to it, I might bring different baggage to it, but we see the same image, and it gives us a common thing to be able to talk about. Especially in this divided time, if you come in with your baggage on the outside, then the discussion ends very quickly. And this is a great way to get that started again.
Yeah, and the whole thing being in Washington, D.C., you know, which is really a very forward-looking, in some ways, community. In other ways, we're still shackled to the past. And many communities have that same thing. And I think by bringing the photographs in, it allows us both to have that anchor of the past, but also to be able to move forward in ways that hopefully is better for everyone. But looking at the World Press photo contest and exhibition, what do you see for that, and what is the mission of that specifically?
Well, the point you just raised is actually very apt, especially here in Washington, D.C., where you have the world's best think tanks and universities, international organizations, civil society groups. It's very strange to me that this exhibition isn't organized here on a regular basis, because everything that's decided in Washington is reflected in the photographs. Every year there's a new series of photographs covering new topics, but these are the topics that are decided upon here in Washington. Mm-hmm. So why not bring all those organizations together to tell the stories behind the photographs? And that's kind of our idea. You know, we don't have any particular policy issue to push, but we want to push dialogue, and we want to bring these great organizations and people together to have that discussion.
Yeah, and again, you need to be praised for the fact that you've actually reached out to virtually everyone that's in this community, and so there's been several hundreds out of this community that you've actually engaged with, and many, if not most of them, are actually going to be involved in this one way or the other. Yeah. And having all these discussion groups all over the city, I mean, this is going to be a buzz for 3 weeks. People are going to be, you know, spread all over the city, and going into communities they may have never even knew existed, and they've been living here for, you know, 50, 60 years. Yep. Within Washington, D.C. So it's a really a time to bring people together, but also to allow them to express themselves at the same time. But you're a development economist.
Yes.
And that's how we actually first met.
Exactly.
And discussed all that. And but going back to you as a photographer, if you are one, and if not, why look at photography specifically? Because this is, in some ways, people think this is a very niche field. Mm-hmm. Others think it's very broad and liberating. So yeah. How do you see that, and what is it in your background that really attracted you to this?
Sam, I don't even take very good holiday pictures. So calling myself a photographer would be a gross overstatement. But when I lived in Holland in 2003, 2004, I organized the exhibition for the first time. And this was around the time of the wars in Afghanistan and then in Iraq. And there was a great deal of division, as there is now, and a great deal of need to have different communities talk. Mm-hmm. And I chaired a lot of discussions between Dutch, Middle Eastern, and American students, because I grew up half here and half there. And then I realized how powerful these photographs could be in facilitating that discussion. So that's kind of what got me started in this. When you see people of different kinds looking at the same photograph, seeing something different in it and discussing that with one another, then you know you've got something that really works.
Yeah, looking at this, we look at this almost from the standpoint of it's going to all be long-term. Even though we're in the present, we're looking at this, we're going to make change for the future. But yet, as you and I talk almost weekly at the Rotary Club, you're seeing change with people and among organizations as you're just going through this process. Yeah. And even for them to decide to become involved with this process or actually inviting this group into Washington, D.C., you're seeing change. So share some of those changes that you've seen, and then what do you think actually long-term is already coming out of this? People don't know it now, but you can kind of see off into the future, this is really having impact.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of great organizations that want this to be a longer-term thing. The Dutch Embassy has sponsored us, for instance, under the condition that we make this a longer-term project. The change, I think, the best way to explain that is to start with myself. I may know 15%, about 15% of the photographs that we have. And simply going from one organization to the next, talking about what it is that they do, talking about the topics that they work on, I start to learn. And effectively, that I notice in myself is sort of also what we hope that others will see. You go to the exhibition to see a sports photograph, because that's your natural area, and out of the corner of your eye, you'll see Jaime Rojo's photograph of monarchs in the snow, and you'll ask yourself, what's that about? What's going on in that image? And then we're able to connect you with different people, such as the photographer himself, nature organizations that can tell you what that story is. It's not so much about changing people's minds on anything, it's about giving them access to information. And what they take out of that is completely up to them.
Yeah, and at the same time, you know, they're standing there, they're reacting to it. People overhear conversations about that. They don't really comment, but they take that away, so you're actually adding something, you know, almost by osmosis, by being in this shared space. Tell us a little bit about the space we're going into. This is the DC Underground. Most people have never been there. Right. Actually, even more people have never even heard of it. But yet, it's a huge space. Tell us about it.
When I've been going around the city, it's been surprising. About 90% of the people I speak to have heard of the space, but have never seen it. It's an abandoned trolley station that was built in the 40s. In the 60s, they closed it down. It's above the DuPont metro station, but below DuPont Circle itself. And it's a semicircular space that's about 150 square feet. So it's absolutely huge. We're going to have 22 projectors all along one wall showing huge 13-foot high images of the series. And then we'll have the supersized blown up photographs of the World Press Photo winners up against the wall. Images from National Geographic as well, from Pulitzer Prize and World Press Photo winner Stephanie Sinclair. And one whole exhibition on 60 years of World Press Photo. So we're trying to fill the space as best we can, but it's huge. And normally the exhibition is a package deal that they ship all over the world. This year, World Press Photo is making something very special for Washington, D.C. And I haven't seen it yet, so I look forward to seeing it.
So you're not sure what it is either. But going back to this space, again, how big is this space?
It's 150,000 square feet. No, sorry, 15,000 square feet.
15,000 square feet. I just want to make sure we had that. So that's about, what, 1,500 square meters. Is that correct?
I'll take your word for it.
Okay, yeah, I think that's what it is. This is for all of our European folks and the metric people out there. But looking at citizens, development organizations, bankers, financial institutions, on top of that, international bodies, and many others, how do you think that they're actually going to take this and put it into their own organizations and either be able to ruminate over it, digest it, or take it and go out other places with it? How do you think this is going to happen?
Some of the photographs that you've been showing, for instance, the one that's up right now, is a photograph of the Zika virus in Brazil. So there are lots of organizations here that work on that topic. You have NIH, the Centers for Disease Control, you have the World Bank, the World Health Organization, the Pan American Health Organization, the Inter-American Development Bank. All of these organizations most people have never heard of. So what we're trying to do is bring them to the exhibition. It's not so much about changing them. They're the experts. They know what's going on a daily basis. It's about bringing that expertise to people like you and I who might not otherwise know about it.
Yeah, and also citizens, school children,
absolutely,
nonprofits of all kind will be coming into this, very much involved. But many times they have their own niche. So they're in the solar world, they're in water or sanitation, whatever. And yet, if you start bringing health and building construction materials and all these other things into it, it's very exciting because, in a way, these all touch each other.
Exactly.
And they need to know about each other. You talked about some of the photographers we're going to have. Many of them are going to be here. Give us a few other names of world notables that we should be looking for.
Sure. Zoe Ann Murphy from the Washington Post is going to be speaking on Sunday. We have Giovanni Capirati, who is a Italian photographer who took an amazing series of photographs of an inclusive rugby team in Canada. Like I said, Jaime Rojo is going to be here talking about his photograph. Stephanie Sinclair. And we're trying to bring together as many of the world press photographers as we can. So that's going to be a very interesting discussion. It's a combination of the photographers, think tanks, international organizations, and the first weekend is going to be dedicated specifically to the role of women photographers. We're doing that.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I mean, EmeraldPlanet really focuses on women as far as every aspect of it, globally. That's very important, and particularly for economic development, small business creation, and jobs. Two last questions. One of those is, how do people know about this? How do they become involved? Show up, that kind of thing. And then where you see this all going for the next 5, 10, or 15 years. And we have about 45 seconds to do all that.
Well, you've told me not
There's
to.
No rush.
You've told me not to talk quickly. Now all of a sudden you give me 45 seconds.
Rush.
What you're doing here is exactly what helps us to spread the word about this. World Press Photo is extremely well known in certain parts of the world, and it hasn't been in Washington for a very long time. And even in the U.S., it's been in New York and it's been in Los Angeles, but the name recognition is low. So we're trying to do this in a big way to get people to know about that. What we do long term is something that we evaluate once everything is done. We're looking down the barrel right now at something that's happening 2 weeks from now. Once that's done, we'll have the time to look at that.
Yeah, well, and anyway, the 5, 10, 15 years, that's something we want to weave into that whole narrative as we're talking about this. This is Robert Mines, Executive Director, Lightscape Foundation, member of the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C. Thank you for being with us as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
Strawberries? Okay.
Okay, so what would you bring to my company?
What do you need?
I need problem-solving skills.
I got through high school without a car, a phone, or a computer.
No college degree, though.
Not yet, but life's taught me a lot, and I'm ready for more.
Well, you're not the typical kind of candidate that I hire. But you are exactly what I'm looking for.
Your company could be missing out on the candidates it needs most. Learn how to find a great pool of untapped talent at gradsoflife.org.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we look around the globe for what we call the best of the best, those 1,000 best practices that are actual solutions to the problems of today's issues, whether it's for the environment, the economy, or community and civil society development. And we're looking around the globe as we add 2 billion new people to the planet by 2050 and how we're going to be able to provide the food, the fuel, the fiber, all the basic infrastructure that they need to have an increased quality of life and not just exist. And we're going to be doing it through the lens of the camera as we're looking at nature, environmental protection, and also environmental decline. And we have a real expert that's going to be coming on with us from Mexico City. This is Jaime Rojo, who is the international award-winning nature photographer. Also, he is a storyteller. This is his own title he gives to himself, what's called Wild Nature. I mean, he has an incredible background, and so we won't go through his whole pedigree. But someone who actually introduced us to Jaime is sitting right beside me. This is Robert W. Mines, Executive Director for the Lightscape Foundation, a member of the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C. Robert, thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure, Sam.
Jaime, I think you're here by Skype. Is that correct?
That is correct, Sam.
Hey, thank you. Welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Glad to have you here. And also, tell us a little bit about being a nature photographer. What is that? Because many people think photography is photography. You know, we're shooting at the birthday party or going to the christening or something like that. A little different than what you're doing. And why the focus on nature and environmental decline and also environmental quality?
Well, for me, the transition to photography came very naturally because I studied environmental sciences, and then for years I worked in conservation. I had moved to Mexico, and I was very inspired by the biodiversity of this country, and I was using photography as a tool in my conservation organization. But at some point in my career, I thought it was a good time to do the shift and to have photography as the main focus of my activity. And as you well said, there are many kinds of photographers. And among nature photographers, there is many people like me that we focus specifically into environmental or conservation stories. And I can speak for myself. I do it because I think it's the contribution I can do for a better world. I think there are thousands of important environmental stories out there to be told. And that is why I decided to focus my career on that very, very specific topic.
And that's the reason that we have Emerald Planet TV, is that we're reaching out to people to share the solutions, not just the problems. And most everything is all about the problems. And so, Jaime, we really appreciate your contributing to the body of knowledge and sharing this information. But also, congratulations on this World Press photo contest winning that you came through, and that's why you're a part of this whole effort. And we'll be able to show this, actually a place that I have been twice now, down where the Monarch's winter in Mexico. And tell us a little bit about this Monarchs in the Snow, which is a very poetic title that you have. Share that with us, and why are the Monarchs in snow? This is Mexico. They shouldn't be in the snow, should they?
Well, you have been there a couple of times. Maybe many people of the audience know about this fantastic migration. The monarch butterflies, for me, is one of the most important wildlife spectacles in North America. These butterflies migrate almost 5,000 kilometers between Canada and Mexico. And as you said, they do it to escape the cold of the winter in farther north in North America. Snow has been seen in the wintering sanctuaries in Mexico, but not with the strength and so late in the season as the storm that we faced in the spring of last year. It was March 2016, and I was working on another project, and I heard the news about this historic snowstorm that was hitting the forest of central Mexico in the state of Michoacan and the state of Mexico. Mm-hmm. And I knew, after more than a decade working with monarch butterflies, I knew this was going to be an opportunity to produce an image that could tell the story it's a complex story, the relationship between climate change, forest degradation, and the survival of monarch butterflies. So you mentioned about the title of the image. I realized after a while that many people go to the exhibition in other parts of the world where it has already been touring, and they don't know what they are seeing. And I kind of like that quality of this image. It's an image that invites you to know more. You need to pay attention, you need to read the caption, and you need to know what is going on to understand. So yes, definitely this is not a typical situation. For me, in my more than 13 years in Mexico, it's the first time that I see this snowstorm. And it was historic, and unfortunately, in an era of climate change, these kind of extreme weather events are expected to increase both in frequency but also in intensity. So it's going to be a major issue that we need to focus on.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing about the weather. The weather events are becoming much more violent, more frequent as far as the destruction nature of this. And that's why we're seeing all this happen across the Caribbean as far as the hurricanes, the almost total destruction of Puerto Rico and then the southern part of the United States. But this is going on all around the globe. I mean, we know about what's happening here because we're so close to the news. But this area that we're looking at again with these monarch butterflies, there's so much that's wrapped into this one photograph, Jaime. It's just incredible. The destruction of this particular pine tree that hosts the monarchs, and they only will host themselves in one of this special variety, the oxmel cedar, actually. And also the schools that we're working with there that have these nurseries that are actually planting more of these trees as the loggers are going in and literally stealing these mature trees and leaving the land barren. So much wrapped into this. So thank you for taking this image. It's just absolutely fantastic. Robert, I think you have the next question.
Thank you, Sam. Jaime, I mean, it's a beautiful image, but like you said, most people don't understand when they see the image why it's a problem for the butterflies to be in the snow. Can you give us some sense of why the butterflies are important to nature and exactly what the impact was of the snow? Was it a couple of thousand butterflies that died? Was it a third of the butterflies that died? What was the impact of this snowstorm?
Well, I would like to begin by saying that this aura of mystery and this poetry about the image is something that I consider very important, because even though we are dealing with environmental issues, with sad stories, I always believe that first things first. Like, my images need to be powerful and need to be graphically appealing. And regarding the impact of the storm, this is such a difficult question. I'm working with one of the most eminent scientists of the monarch butterflies. He's Dr. Lincoln Brower. He's based out in Virginia, and he's been studying the monarchs for more than 5 decades. And just after the storm, I contacted him to try to make an estimate of the possible impact that we have had with the storm, because as you know, there are millions of butterflies that gather in a very small patch of forest, and they concentrate in such a density that counting the individuals is impossible. So conservationists, what they do is they measure the size of the colony in the forest, and they estimate the relative abundance of the species by extrapolating that from the hectares or acres of forest covered by the colonies, no? And this storm came after a couple of very bad years. And maybe later, if we have time, we can talk. The environmental decline of the monarch butterfly is a very complex problem and is related to many issues. But in this particular storm, after a while and after the studies and the analysis were processed, Dr. Brower told me that the best estimate could be something about a third of the colony had died during the storm. And they are very resilient insects, these butterflies. They can survive below freezing temperatures as long as they remain dry. But the problem is that many of them, with the strength of the blizzard, they fall onto the ground, to the forest floor, and then during the midday, the sun melts the ice, and it creates this moisture. But also in this particular day, after the storm, it got very, very cold in the night, colder than the below 5 degrees Celsius. That's the threshold in which butterflies have a cell death and they die. So when I was shooting the image, I wasn't sure of the impact that it was having on the colony. After researching, after all the conversations with the scientists, I know this was a catastrophic event.
Yeah, and the whole thing about it, as far as the estimates right now, they're saying there's only about 10% of the entire population of monarchs left on the planet anyway, at least in North America. And so then you're taking another third of that and killing off. I mean, it's catastrophic of what's going on. And these are chief pollinators, and so they're very needed. So people think about, well, what's a butterfly? We don't need them. But, you know, if you want to have grapes, if you want to have apples and cherries, you want to have your wheat plants, all these things, everything needs to be pollinated. And there's different pollinators, but the monarchs are, as they say, it's the king of butterflies, but also it's the king of the pollinators as well. So, and I've just been leaving your image up. We have other images, but I think your story is so powerful, Jaime, we're going to leave that. Looking at, as far as the snowstorm and people realizing what it is, how do we actually share this? And this goes back to what Robert's doing as far as the World Press photo exhibition here. How do we actually spread this message so we can take this very powerful image, but translate it so people actually understand what it is, the impact that's happening all across the globe, and the fact that climate change is very real, and in many ways it's very violent. And so it's giving a whole degree of uncertainty to everything. It's food security, you know, water, all these issues that are so complex. Now, all of it's being impacted in a negative way by climate change. How do we take your image, translate that so that people know when they come out of the 3 weeks, they've really learned something and they know more than what they're getting in the press or what many politicians may think that we need to hear?
Well, something I really like about the power of still photography versus video is that one still image, such as this one of the monarch butterflies, it's easier to remember. It's easier, you know, to stay in people's mind and to have these subtle connections with complex topics like the one you were mentioning. I'm so glad that you bring up
Jaime, we're going to lose you, sir. This is Jaime Rojo. We'll come back as we look around the globe as we create the Emerald Planet.
You know what, guys? There's a lot of tree branches and dry brush over here. We should probably move the bonfire over there.
I'm guessing Smokey liked that idea.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation.
You're resigning?
Why? You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit. Oh, I forgot. I'll do better. Please don't quit on me.
Don't let your heart quit on you. Get your uncontrolled high blood pressure to a healthy range before it's too late.
So you can't save money? That's easy as pie. Brown bag your lunch instead of going out. $6 save times 5 days a week times 10 years is $21,000. That's a lot of lettuce. Small changes today, big bucks tomorrow. Feedthepig.org.
Did you know kids who play outdoors have healthier lungs?
Totally. I did. Did you know that boys that play with dolls make better husbands?
My son has lots of dolls.
But did you know terry cloth diapers breathe better?
I did.
It's totally true.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that strollers have the right of way on the sidewalk?
Yes.
Yep, I did. Did you guys
Did you know that kids who eat breakfast have higher GPAs?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That's actually what I was going to say.
Did you know babies should never touch silver? It's really bad for them.
I knew that.
Did you guys know that statistically friendly kids have more friends?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's obvious.
Did you know most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat to make sure your child is protected.
I'm putting that on my blog.
I just put it in mine.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you and looking at 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, technology, services, products, and the people, of course, that are making a difference as we go through the 21st century. And by the end of this century, we may have 12 to 13 billion, yes, 12 to 13 billion people on the planet. So how are we going to be able to feed, to clothe, to do everything that's necessary, at the same time provide the infrastructure that's needed? And as we see that climate change is real and it's having a definite negative impact on the environment and on the climate, how are we going to be able to handle that and expand the services instead of contracting and wondering where all the resources are going to come from? And we have someone that's joining us who is a internationally renowned photographer, going to be talking about this from the standpoint of nature, the environment, and environmental impact of climate change. This is Jaime Rojo. He is the international award-winning nature photographer, also a wild nature storyteller, and he's coming in by Skype from Mexico City. And our good friend who's been with us before, this is Robert Mines. He is the executive director of what's called Lightscape Foundation, and also a member of the International Relations Committee of the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C. And Robert, thank you for being with us on all this. And we're going to talk about more significant things that you're doing as far as Lightscape is concerned. Jaime, I think you're here by Skype. Welcome to Emerald Planet TV.
Thank you very much.
And we have a number of logos up as we get started, but Wild Nature Storyteller, give us a little background about what that is, why that is, and why you think that's so important as you're reaching out to the community, because you're not only a world awarded photographer and a storyteller, but you actually go out and you interact with the community about the climate, about the environment, in a way that many photographers wouldn't even think about doing or not have the background. So go back to this wild nature, and why is that important?
Well, no, I think wild nature is essential for the health of our societies. We depend on wild nature for our future. And I believe also that our species is hardwired for stories. We love storytelling. We have been doing it for millennia. And in an era of excessive information, I think that powerful stories about the environment, about our impact in the planet, are very meaningful. And that's why I have focused for the last, it's already 10, 15 years, I have tried to focus on that specifically, on telling stories about wild nature, about our relationship with wild nature, why is it important, and how we depend on it.
Yeah, and we have this first photograph. We actually were chatting about this a little earlier, but the monarchs in the snow. And this really goes to the nature of wild nature, because they're out there, they're dependent on nature to take care of them, and at the same time, we have humankind, going in and actually, messing with Mother Nature, and that's not really a very good combination. And so looking at these stories about wild nature, what are you trying to tease out? And we don't necessarily have to go back through this photograph, because I think it says it for itself. But how do we tease out of this wild nature topic that you have all the different issues, but also maybe the solutions that we need to handle what's going on in the environment, as we are adding 2 billion new people to the planet, within the next 20, 30 years?
Well, as you very well know, environmental problems are very complex, and every complex problem requires complex solutions. So there is not one straight line approach. We need to tackle our current environmental issues from many different angles. I do it from the point of view of storytelling, trying to inspire, trying to engage people, to make them commit into action. And there are many other ways to do it. You raised the point of population growth, and that we are reaching this threshold of 9 billion and much more. And I strongly believe that Mother Earth, nature, she will survive without us. It's our survival, it's our quality of life, it's our well-being what is on stake. So I want to make that point very clear. It's our hubris as a species, like, we are going to save the planet. We are not going to save anything. If we're going to say something, it's ourselves. And that's where we should focus the effort. And well, we could speak for hours about what are the approaches for conservation, for an environmental future, but I just want to make that point very clear.
Yeah, and we have a question from Al from Fairfax Station, Robert. And so if you go ahead and share the next question, and we'll get to this for Al, and also we'll hear more from Jaime.
Sure. Well, Sam, instead of asking the question, I'd like to just highlight the fact that what Jaime is doing is exactly the reason why we're organizing the World Press Photo Exhibition. We have Jaime talking about this topic, and we have a whole range of different topics that are all exactly with similar importance and needing a great dialogue between different people. And Jaime's role is to show his expertise, to show his photo, and to wake people up to this specific topic. And our role is a little bit more humble. We simply want to build a platform for the Jaimes of this world to be able to show and start that dialogue.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing about Emerald Planet TV. It's really, as we're saying, it's Jaime's story, and now almost 2,300 other people that we've had on Emerald Planet TV. It's their stories, and we're here to actually help them tell it. And this image that we have right here, this is not a photograph I don't believe that Jaime took, but this gives you the idea of what's going on in the Earth and how humankind is impacting in a very negative way. And this goes really, Jaime, to the storytelling that you're doing, is that, you know, humankind is interacting in a very violent way with nature. And what you have to say is that nature's starting to involve itself and impact us in a very violent way. So looking at what you're doing as far as the work, photography, other photographers, how are we actually enhancing that storytelling? And that really gets to Al's question from Fairfax Station, is how do we get that out there so people can see the issue, but actually unpack it so they have some knowledge, they can actually do something with it?
That's a very good question, Sam. First thing is that the role of platforms like the World Press Photo, Lightscape, or the EmeraldPlanet is extremely important for these days. We live in an era of excess of information, so I think that is very important that someone curates that information and select that the most meaningful topics. And I have worked in conservation for many years, and there is this urge always to include call to actions into our messages, no? It's very nice to tell the stories of what's going on in the planet, but if we don't tell, or we don't suggest, or we don't invite people into action, the impact of our work is very limited. However, it is also very easy to fall into very simple and very lightweight recommendations of what should we do. The problem that we are facing as a society is very serious, it's very complex, and I think it requires drastic change in our lives. And it's not an easy discussion, it's not an easy debate. And I like to raise it slowly in presentations, with friends. I try to get of whether if we are ready as a society. I do believe it has to do a lot with the increase of population. I do believe it has to do with the way we consume in the Western societies. So it's not an easy and friendly debate. It's not about just recycling or using a cloth bag in the supermarket. We are approaching a threshold. We are approaching a point in which we need to start thinking about much more serious actions to be taken.
Yeah, and looking at the sea turtle here and just trying to get through this fishing net, and there's millions of linear feet of fishing net all over the oceans, and of course even in freshwater areas. And so there's no place on this planet that humankind, with the type of consumerism societies that we've built, we're not impacting some ways in a very negative manner. So taking this image here, Jaime, kind of extrapolate a little storytelling, say for 30 to 60 seconds, so it won't be a long story, but how do we extract out of this what we need to be telling other people, and what Robert's doing as the World Press Photo Exhibition in Washington, D.C. How do we do that?
Well, this extremely powerful image is by my friend Francis Perez from Spain too, and it tells a message. It speaks for itself. That's why it's a good image. It tells a story about how our ignorance, our excesses are impacting wildlife. And I believe what we are trying to do with WordPress Photo and Lightscape Foundation is to amplify these messages. All these pictures in this exhibition tell a powerful story. If we have this platform to amplify, we will reach thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that maybe after they see the exhibition, they will have a takeaway message. They will think about it. It's not our role to tell everyone what to do. I think there is a very strong sense of individual responsibility. We need to think what we can do to change our impact on the planet.
Fantastic. And we'll have this image up. Robert, why don't you go ahead and take your next question, please?
Sure, Jaime. This is a bit of an easier question. You live in Mexico, the beautiful country where there's so much to see and film. Where else do you shoot in the world, and what are some of your favorite places and topics to photograph?
Bueno, Robert, honestly, a few years ago, I decided that I wanted to focus a lot in Mexico. I do work internationally because I do have an international background. I come from another country, and I travel back and forth. But in terms of my professional activity, this country has so much to offer that I have tried to have impact where I live. And I think that's an ideal situation. Not everybody is as lucky as I am to live in a country where I feel that my actions are contributing to conservation. That said, I have traveled to several places in the world, and I am very involved in some projects in the Mediterranean, and I want to maintain the bridge between my heritage in Europe and my new life in America. So yeah, it's mostly that I am interested in having a local impact, and if by local is Mexico, I feel very lucky.
Yeah, and the whole thing about your background is very interesting. You are from Spain, living in Mexico, and it's almost like, in a sense, you've gone back 500 years, and you're straddling that from, the old colonial days into the new Mexico and the new Latin America. So it's a very interesting background you have. We're going out on this image. Jaime, what do you see for the growth and development of storytelling as a body of work going forward over the next 5, 10, 15 years? And you got to be quick.
There is thousands of images out there today, and I think we live in a very exciting time. So some people see it as catastrophic. I think we have millions of opportunities to reach out people in a way it wasn't possible before. So
Thank
I'm
you
looking
for being
forward
with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
Jaime, can you hear me?
No.
I can hear you.
Oh, you can?
It's hard, no?
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
I dare you. I dare you to change the world. Yeah, you. Getting that college education. I dare you to be somebody important. Like be a teacher. Or a reality TV star. I dare you to stand up here. To call the shots. To be a role model.
An inspiration. An innovator.
To be a teacher. Think you can change my life? Make me excited about science like you? Have a career that really means something? Then do it. I dare you.
They say you don't have to be so strong. But this is my mother, my purpose. Strength is not optional. See, I lift her now like she raised me then. So I know my strength is super, but I'm still human.
Oh, look who's here.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello, welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you on a week-to-week basis as we look around the globe looking for those solutions, the 1,000 best practices, technologies, services, products as we move through the 21st century. And how we're going to be able to take care of the 2 billion new people that are going to be joining us on the planet by 2050, and possibly by the end of this century, there'll be 12 to 13 billion people. And people say, well, we can't afford or can't handle the people we have here. But a little aside is that they say we're already producing enough food for 12 to 13 billion people today, and literally we're wasting half of that. And so we have to be very conscious of what it is that we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're not only protecting the planet, but at the same time to use the proper resources that we can really enhance the quality of life for people and not just have them existing. And we're going to be looking at this whole thing as far as climate change, the environment, the green world out there, and we're doing it through photography. And we have someone that's sitting right beside me that's helped to organize all this. This is Nicole Butler. She is the Director of Public Relations of what's called Lightscape Foundation, and she's going to tell us what that's all about. And also, she's a very proud member of the International Relations Committee of the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C. And Nicole, it's always a pleasure to see you every week at the Rotary meetings, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm glad to have you. What is Lightscape Foundation, and why did you become involved?
Yes, so the Lightscape Foundation is a 501c3 organization, or a nonprofit organization that was really put together solely to bring the World Press Photo Exhibition here to Washington, D.C. And I decided to become involved because I truly believe in what the World Press Photo Exhibition is about. How we are actually bringing it here to Washington, D.C. really will arrive in Washington, D.C. as a bunch of pictures that are larger than life size. But what we are trying to do as from a Lightscape Foundation perspective is to ensure that there is dialogue, provocative dialogue about each of the photos, so that people whose paths wouldn't otherwise cross can cross.
Yeah, and the whole thing about this is that this is really organized, and our mutual friend and colleague in Rotary, Robert Mines, is kind of the brain trust of bringing that here to Washington, D.C. And it's amazing. It's been to world capitals all across the globe, and not in Washington, D.C. I mean, that's a real sacrilege. But at the same time, it really, you're engaging dozens and hundreds of organizations throughout the area. Tell us a little bit about your work as far as being in the public relations, how you're bringing all those people together, and then how they stay themselves, but at the same time they contribute to the dialogue that's going to help the whole.
Yes, so thank you for that question. As Director of Public Relations, the very first role is to ensure that the message gets out. What is World Press Photo, and why is it here? It has been all over the world, and to your point, we have largely missed out on it, and we are in the center of the world stage. And so, you know, while it's here, we'll actually be in France and in Paris, in St. Petersburg in Russia, just all over the world. And so I think it is fantastic and invigorating that it will actually be here. And so the role one is to get the word out about what it is. Secondarily, to say not only is there an opportunity for people or the audience to see the larger than life size photography, but to actually have meaningful dialogue about it. And I think that's really the role of Lightscape Foundation in terms of bringing these think tank organizations together, universities, NGOs, Rotary Club, etc., so that people then have an action to take after the dialogue has been started.
Now, looking at the World Press Photo Exhibition, what is it that makes that special, and why is it so necessary to bring it here? And you know, we know it's been all over the globe for almost 60 years now, or I guess this is the 60th year. And at the same time, you know, we need to have something like that here because it engages and brings, you know, thousands, tens of thousands of people in. But why photos, of all things?
Yes, so, you know, I guess my answer would be two-part to that question. One is that sometimes photos can generate an emotion, invoke a reaction that words otherwise cannot do. And so I think creating a dialogue in a way that enriches an experience for people to come together and talk about the world's issues through these award-winning photography or photographs, that's a real unique experience. And so that's one of the reasons why I think people will be remiss not to come. They will miss out on something that the world has been enjoying for quite some time.
Yeah, and looking at this, you know, we're all about the intersect between the environment and the economy and also civil society and community development. But these are really powerful images, and they go way beyond, you know, just this focus as far as the economy and the environment, and really invoke, you know, real emotion in people in ways that, as you're saying, words really in some ways can't express this. You have to see it and to feel it, right?
That's right.
And so you're a very busy woman.
Yes.
You know, you're a business person.
Yes.
You're actually an opera singer.
Yes.
You're a real opera singer because I've heard you sing, and it's absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
But what made you want to go into something that's so intense and take such emotional capital in order to do this? And blend that with everything else that you have, as well as home and school and, you know, all the 27 other things that people in Washington, D.C. are doing on a day-to-day basis. Why?
Yes, so, you know, sometimes I think that we forget how big the world is. Here in Washington, D.C., we're in the center of the world stage, and it gets easy for us to get busy in our day-to-day lives. And we forget that sometimes that there's so many persistent issues happening around the world that impact us, that impact people we should care about, because ultimately at some point it may come back around to us. And I am also a member of another organization that takes actions towards healing or helping some of these persistent world issues. And so because I am also invested in that organization, this World Press photo just really aligns with that quite well, and in such a way through pictures versus again through words.
Yeah.
And so it, you know, again, just provides another opportunity to showcase what it is that's important.
Yeah, and looking at the role of the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C. and Rotary International itself, and I'm going to ask you this question: how do you see this meshing together of these two organizations? And I tell people that Rotary really is bigger than many countries because of the number of people that are involved. 187 countries, almost 1.4 million people, but 34,000 clubs. And that's the number. It's incredible because you can go in very small places in Guatemala, India, and places like that. And there's a Rotary Club. And you go to New York City and you go to the UN, and the UN has its own Rotary Club. So what is it about Rotary, and then also the World Press Photo Exhibition, that really aligns themselves to all of this and this dialogue?
So thank you. I will actually be at Rotary UN Day in Geneva in a few weeks. Will be my first time going, but again, that particular stage raises an opportunity for the dialogue to continue, to say, you know, to collectively educate business leaders, professionals around the world about what is happening in the corners of the world, in the little villages around the world, and to elevate the cares and concerns. And so the Rotary Club, to your point, they're in every corner, every center that there is, and so that allows for us to uniquely reach out to the crevices that sometimes other organizations and sometimes large governments can't, and quickly resolve matters. And so because Rotary, the Rotary Club, of which I'm a member here in Washington, D.C., is directly tied to some of those matters, be it here, be it Singapore or Puerto Rico. Certainly you know of quite a few of those initiatives that we're involved in, again, it just really brings together people who are already involved intimately in the dialogue or making business decisions, helping to have water where there isn't any, electricity where there isn't any. The eradication of polio, of course, has been the long-time mission of Rotary, and we've been very much successful, of course, that you know. And so those two organizations, it just, with World Press Photo and the Rotary Club, it just brings us together in a way that I don't think it has been before. It provides a picture of what we actually do.
Yeah, I think that's very, very important. And also the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C. is the national capital club for the United States. And of course, with the number of clubs, I mean, that's out of 34,000, there's only, about 180 plus or minus clubs like that. So it's a very unique role that even our own club has to play in all this. And the same thing as far as bringing, the World Press photo exhibition here is unique. You have a couple of images here you wanted to talk about why they're your favorites, and we're going to give you that opportunity. And we got to do it quick because we're almost out of time. So
sure.
The first one, tell us about this.
So this first one is called Sweat Makes Champions. And it is of Chinese gymnasts who are obviously practicing a stand, and they're unhappy. And I think from an opera singer's perspective or an artist's perspective, in alignment with the gymnasts or athletes who repeatedly work on our craft, our technique, sometimes it can go overboard, either by coach or by teacher, and it takes away the joy of what it is we actually do. And when our joy is taken away, the audience then can't experience the joy.
Right.
So I think that picture actually provides that in a unique way.
Okay, and this one, and then we got to be quick.
Sure. This particular picture, of course, being born and raised in the inner city of Chicago, she's taken a stand in Baton Rouge by Jonathan Bachman. And I think this has largely been a conversation on, at least within the U.S., for quite some time, particularly within the past 2 years. And I think this, regardless of your story or my story, it provides an opportunity for us to talk about how this impacts us or our families, be it here or worldwide.
But just think of Othello. How many centuries back that was? This is almost like that. This is a stage. You see the ballet, you see the opera singer, you see humanity coming into play. It's just an incredible photo.
That's right, yes.
What do you see as far as the World Press exhibitions going in the future? And we got to be quick.
Yes, I think we continue to bring dialogue, continue to bring World Press Photo here and encourage dialogue and action.
Nicole Butler, Director of Public Relations, Lightscape Foundation, as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.